Hello and welcome for this second video in the series of 4 free videos. This series of videos is offered to you in addition to my ebook Buy Your House on the French Riviera with Peace of Mind. I am extremely happy to have you again on my YouTube channel, and I hope that you will take as much as pleasure in following this video as I had in preparing and shooting it. My name is Fabrizio Carminati. I am the founder and CEO of FRH, French Riviera House Hunting, and I am your exclusive real estate hunter for the French and Italian Riviera. Today, I will talk about a psychological subject that fascinates me and that often interferes when buying a house: the cognitive biases. A cognitive bias is a misleading and false logical thinking pattern. This form of thinking can bring a person to make a wrong judgment or take a decision too quickly. Cognitive biases influence our choices, especially when dealing with large amounts of information or when time is limited. Thus, a form of dysfunctional reasoning occurs. In order to take action or give meaning to an event, our brain will use unconscious subjective beliefs. The risk of a wrong decision then becomes very important. This mechanism is systematic. In other words, for a given individual, a given situation will lead to a given cognitive bias. However, being aware of it allows the human being to exercise free will. For example, a very common cognitive bias is the overgeneralization bias. Difficult word. So how does it manifest itself? Let's say that you are applying for a job and that the job interview goes wrong. Maybe because you're just too tense or not well enough prepared. This is a one-off situation that can happen to all of us. You fail this time, but you can succeed the next time. However, if you are influenced by an overgeneralization bias, you will think that because you failed this one time, you are good at nothing and that you will never be able to find a job because you always fail, which is completely wrong. Nothing proves that you won't make it, but you have drawn a negative general conclusion out of a single event. So you might wonder, how can cognitive biases affect a property acquisition? Well, just as it affects any decision-making process in our life. Every day, at every time, we are influenced by our cognitive biases, and there are 250 of them. You can't escape them, but you can learn how to recognize them and clear your judgment. I want you to take a few seconds to look around you, especially if you're at home. If not, do this when you get back home. I am sure that you can identify one or several objects that you have bought that you never use or that you really never liked once purchased. But it's sitting there on the shelf, catching dust. Why? Because when you purchased it, your brain did not realize that this object would be useless as your purchase action was influenced by some cognitive biases. The same one you might encounter when buying a property. So, here are the 8 cognitive biases that can alter your judgment when buying a property and that can lead you to purchase it even if it doesn't really fully match your criteria. The first one is the confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is the very common tendency to seek and consider only information that confirms our beliefs and to ignore or discredit information that challenges them. For example, you want to buy a house on a very specific area because it's a beautiful, popular, exclusive and expensive area. And because it's expensive and popular, you believe it's exclusive. This happens because you have programmed your brain this way, and therefore you will not consider that there are other areas as much exclusive but less expensive, and you will not take into consideration any information that challenges your belief. A good example, as I wrote in my free ebook, is the difference between the villages of Bargemont and Calas in the Var. Bargemont became famous and expensive when Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie bought a house there. So people wanted to buy there too, without considering that just nearby, the village of Calas and its surroundings offer the same exclusive environment for a much better price. The second bias is the halo effect bias. The halo effect occurs when someone's perception of another person is influenced by his or her previous opinion of the other person's attributes. For example, a person with a good physical appearance will be perceived as intelligent and trustworthy. The fame effect is also a halo effect. A good-looking, dynamic real estate agent might therefore influence your choices and make you buy a property that doesn't meet your expectations, just because his appearance and way of being tells your brain that he is trustworthy and knows what he's talking about. That's why in car shows, for example, expensive cars, I presented my models. The third bias is the overconfidence bias. Overconfidence is the tendency to overestimate one's abilities. This bias has been highlighted by psychological experiments which have shown that more than half of the participants believed they had better than average abilities in various fields. For instance, more than 50% believed that they had above average intelligence. This particular bias is very dangerous when buying a house, and you should learn how to detect it. My experience has shown me that a lot of people think they know everything about real estate. They believe that with one glimpse they can tell that the house they are visiting is in a perfect condition, and they will not double-check the information given by the real estate agent. This is a huge mistake, as there are many items to check before buying a property. The next bias is the correlation illusion bias. The correlation illusion is the perception of a connection between two unrelated events, or the exaggeration of a connection that is actually weak. For example, when visiting a house, you might notice that the present owner has a dog that looks exactly the same as the dog you had when you were a kid, and you will start to create a mental path that tells you that this must be the house for you, as the dog's presence is a sign of destiny. You will buy the house based on this event connection without considering all the other aspects, and maybe end up living in a house that you don't like just because there was a dog in it. Bias number 5 is the anchoring bias. Anchoring bias is giving excessive importance to the first piece of information received, the anchor point. Subsequent judgments and interpretation of information tend to be made on the basis of this first information. This is a very common bias encountered in a real estate acquisition process. For example, let's say you are looking for a property with a sea view, and the first information given by the real estate agent is that the house has a magnificent sea view. You might tend to neglect other characteristics of the house that don't match your criteria simply because the main information has been confirmed. By giving so much importance to the sea view information, you will start filtering the other information about the property. The following bias is the representativeness bias. The representativeness bias is a mental shortcut that consists of making a judgment based on a few elements that are not necessarily representative. On the contrary of the other biases, this one may prevent you from buying the perfect house because you have given too much attention on some irrelevant details. It often happens when a house needs refurbishing. For example, you might think that the house is not enough enlightened just because the walls are painted dark gray. You will therefore consider that the house does not meet your criteria, while just painting the walls in white would completely change its appearance. As you might reckon, the painting color is a simple detail. Bias number 7 is the belief in a fair world. The belief in a fair world is the tendency to believe that the world is fair and that people deserve what happens to them. Studies have shown that this belief often fulfills an important need for security. Different cognitive processes are involved in maintaining the belief that society is fair despite the facts showing the contrary. This is one of the most important biases to understand because its consequences can be disastrous. If you look at the world through this bias, you will think that the real estate agent you're dealing with is the kindest and most fair person in the world. He might as well be. But what if not? What if he's trying to sell you a property that doesn't really matches your expectations, just because he needs to close the deal to get his commission fees? What if he doesn't care about your will? I'm not saying that all people are bad. I'm just saying that it is always better to double check. And the last bias is the false consensus bias. False consensus bias is the tendency to believe that others agree with us more than they actually do. It happens often that we ask family or friends to visit a property with us so that they can give us their advices and feelings about this property. But because for many personal reasons or because of some other cognitive bias influencing us, Even if the families or friends' feedback is not so positive, we will perceive it as if it was, simply because our judgment is not impartial. On the other hand, be careful when asking families or friends advice. You might end up with many contrary advices that might totally confuse you. Marketing techniques are more and more based on this cognitive bias, and good sellers will know how to use them to manipulate your thoughts and make you take decisions over which you will have lost control. That is why the best way to make sure that your decision-making process is not influenced by one or more of these 8 biases that I have presented to you is to entrust a property hunter. We will make sure that the house you wish to buy completely meets your expectations. If it doesn't, we will never force you to buy it, because our objective is to protect your interests only, and because we are not linked in any way to the seller or its representative. I hope you enjoyed this second video of our series of 4 free videos. I thank you for having followed it to the end, and I will see you soon for the 3rd free video, in which I will present you the main assets of the French Riviera. I will also explain why Nice and several other cities on the French Riviera are at the top of the last ranking of French cities and villages where it is good to live. For any further information about our services, you might want to visit our website. The access link is here below this video. Also, on my YouTube channel, you will be able to discover twice a month a new video in which I will be presenting each time a different place of the French Riviera, and I will give you all the information you need to know about the place in terms of real estate. I look forward to seeing you for my next video of this series of 4 free videos. In the meantime, take care of yourself and see you soon. Bye!